Welcome to Musings of Mavry. I'm your host Mavry, and today we're going to be reacting to Goblin Slayer Episode 8. So, spoiler alert, in case you haven't watched the last episode yet, Goblin Slayer and his companions are in some deep shit, right? They're almost gotten wiped out in the last episode, and Goblin Slayer is hanging on by a hair. I don't think he's actually going to die because that's just not something that happens. He's the protagonist of this anime. And the series, if he dies, you know, that'd be epic, but that's not something that really happens. Besides this, I actually went through and looked at some theories, not just the last episode, but on the world as a whole. And I also picked up the manga now. So I have to say, the manga is really good. I think it actually gives a bigger impact than what the anime is currently portraying. But I guess that's to be expected, considering that, those that can watch the anime they need to have some censorship, right? But in any case, we'll talk about that in the later part of the review. Right now, I want to get right into the action. So, the starting of this episode is actually the opening, so I skipped that part, and we're gonna go right in. So, 3, 2, 1, go. So, backstory episode of the Goblin Slayer. So this was his master. Wait, is this the same voice that called out to him last episode, which caused him to awaken? Yeah, it should be this guy. What the hell are you? Yeah, his master. Nothing? What are you? So my theory was that that dude is kind of like a god. Oh, and yeah, the classic thing where he wakes up in the town maybe a few days later. Oh, wait, what? Who? What? She's not gonna wake up. Sword Maiden? We see her eyes. I do believe she's blind, though. Wait, what? Yeah. I'll talk about that part in the... Oh, they actually mentioned it. Yeah. No, they're probably not gonna say. Yeah, we already know. 10 years ago. Oh, she's not completely blind. I wonder if we're ever gonna see his full face. Damn, Goblin Slayer is ripped. Mm. Damn, look at that. Oh! Are we gonna see Priestess in another outfit? He cares about the canary? Yeah, it would seem that way. Well, they're getting right back into the action. And then... Okay, so it wasn't like a few days later, which I thought. I kind of wanted to see Priestess in her other clothes for a while longer. You know, it should be pretty traumatic for the elf as well. It's for equipment. Aww. She is way too cute and pure for this world. Wait! What is with his helmet? Don't you need to fix your helmet? Are you gonna treat ours as an ice cream? Ah, Priestess is too cute. Are you gonna have some? Huh? So he's gonna learn how to make it. Yeah. Hmm? Oh, he's opening up to Priestess now. She's doing this because she wants to. I wonder if there was some symbolism in that scene. Can you maybe speak like twice as fast? To kill some goblins. I wonder what that is. Slay some goblins. Yep. Yeah, it's his home. Oh, did he gunpowder? Okay. So it's like a guard? Ooh. Laser eyeballs? Disintegrate. Hmm. Okay, so it's a kind of a room guardian type. This is... They're really going all out with this dungeon setting. No fire. Explosion. I'm gonna guess right now. Explosion. He's gonna try some kind of explosion thing. So why not just kill him like this right now? Yep, it's gonna explode. Isn't that a little bit overkill? Oh, that's true. Technalities. A gate? Oh, and we've ended. Alright, I'll see you guys in just a second. And that was episode 8 of Goblin Slayer. So, we finally get some more backstory regarding Goblin Slayer. Like, what was his story? I mean, we know that he's become the way he is, and he wants to exact revenge on goblins because they basically, pillaged his home, killed his family, and whatnot. But how did he get to become what he is right now? And in here, we see some beginning of the answers of that, which is he had a master. And as it turns out, this master is also one of those, I guess, tough love kind of guys, a bit eccentric. So not your normal, uh, your normal sword master or whatnot. So this guy, he's a mystery, right? Although, like I said, I feel like the guy that we saw last episode, when Goblin Slayer got his burst of strength from his eyes, there was one scene where the camera panned into his eye and into his either mind or internal body, and then we can see his master, basically the silhouette of his master and his voice talking to him. So again, if I'm going back to my theory from last episode, I believe that Goblin Slayer is being blessed by a god of some sort. So perhaps his master is some sort of god? Well, I don't know, but he certainly does seem very, godlike, speaking in cryptic tongues and having some inexplainable magic, as well as always talking about fate and different kinds of philosophy and all that. But anyways, so I assume that they're gonna build up this in the future as well, and we'll finally get to see what the heck is about his eye and his abilities. So that was, I guess, sort of like a flashback dream that Goblin Slayer had while he was unconscious. And once he woke up, and hey, it's the priestess sleeping naked next to him. And then the sword maiden comes in as well, and she's like, how was it sharing a bed with us too? But I did go back, and it seems that that's all they did. They just shared a bed, right? No, well, probably have to go look at the manga or the light novel, but I don't believe they had intercourse. Maybe, maybe not. I thought it was going to be one of those kinds of spells, but apparently, from what I can see in this episode from the anime, it seems that just sharing a bed is good enough. So, meh. Though the Sword Maiden didn't have to be there, right? Because she's, like she said, it requires you to be a virgin for you to cast this spell. But she's not a virgin anymore. So I guess she was there for basically moral support for the priestess, since she's just a little girl and probably, too embarrassed to do something like that, I guess. And speaking of which, so this is something that I actually found out while doing some research, but they went ahead and said it this episode. So in the last episode, there was this during the bathhouse scene. The priestess and the sword maiden were having a conversation, right? And afterwards, the priestess was like, she knows what the goblins are while trembling. So I didn't quite get what that was at that time, but as it turns out, you know, the Sword Maiden was actually a victim of goblin assault. So she was defiled before at, as you mentioned, 10 years ago, before she became the Sword Maiden as she is now. So, well, they went ahead and confirmed it in this anime, so I don't need to explain this one further. So, again, tragic story, but it's in this setting, so uh, you can't really say much about it, right? This is just the setting of this world. This is what goblins do, and they do that to everyone. A lot of people. If you're a guy, they kill you, they mutilate you. If you're a girl, you're dragged back and used as mothers for their offspring. And that's just how goblin society works. It's how they operate. And that's it. Although, it is interesting to note that Sword Maiden, because in the first episode, they mentioned that, you know, a lot of these kinds of girls who are dragged into this situation eventually turn into basically a walking shell of themselves, right? So in the first episode, when we had the martial arts girl, after she was defiled, she had this lifeless look in her eyes. So basically no hope and didn't want to really live anymore. But as it turns out, Sword Maiden, even though she experienced the same thing, she actually became the Sword Maiden and was the one to slay the Demon Lord. So, you know, props to her. Props to her. Okay, so what else? After that, yeah, they all, you know, Priestess got up. We had some cute interaction between those two, and then the rest of the gang shows up, and so it turns out that they didn't actually heal for that long because they said that they went without eating, and I'm assuming that they're not gonna go like a week without eating, so maybe at most a couple of days or something like that. And then they all went out and had some food and prepared to adventure again. So the other three split off to scout, and we're left with Goblin Slayer and Priestess to basically run some errands around town, and maybe call it a mini date, if you will. Yeah, a mini date. So again, we see some of the affection that Priestess has toward Goblin Slayer, saying, "Oh, I want to treasure this chainmail because, you know, this is the first thing that you complimented me on." And we can see that Goblin Slayer is also opening up a little bit more to Priestess as well. So he's accepting that, hey, I have this companion with me now, so I can tell her a little bit more about myself and also not be so cold and aloof and distant. So they run around town, have some nice interactions. The Priestess is adorable. Like, ah, I know a lot of people ship, or they like Cowgirl more, you know, being the childhood friend and all, and always being there to support him. And I get that, I get that. But the Priestess is just so damn adorable. Like, ah, she's so cute. She's so cute. And she's not, the good thing is that even though she's adorable and cute, and rather inexperienced and naive, but she's not the annoying kind of naive, right? Unlike certain girls from other series that are airing this season as well. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. Priestess is adorable. I ship it. I ship it. And then after that, we get to near the end of the episode. So there's this big eye dude that they want to take out. I thought that something was very interesting to me is that it felt very much like one of those dungeon crawling games or roguelikes where you clear out rooms one by one, right? And this, you know, eye thingamajig, this eye/tentacle monster resides in one room, and that is his defensive and offensive perimeter. So if you don't enter this room, you're okay. But if you do enter this room, then he'll have to. That's an encounter. You have to kill it. I thought that was, you know, there's a lot of parallels to actual D&D or fantasy or RPG within this series. One thing, actually, this is going back a little bit, but one thing that I did found out with the symbolism of is that, you know, when the past few episodes, when they kept on showing the dice, It blew my mind. That is actually what happens if you think about it. That's what happens when you play a D&D board game, right? You need to roll for different kinds of checks. You know, perception checks, damage level, accuracy, and whatnot. When I saw this being stated, I was like, dude, that is like the most obvious thing ever. How could I not know about this? My mind was blown. I was like, oh, so that's what they were going for. So, in any case, what I'm trying to say is we already knew that this series is based on Dungeons and Dragons and all those other fantasy settings in games. But they actually do portray it a lot more than maybe even I realized. So, including the dice throwing, including the encounter underground within a room with a monster. Speaking of which, the way that the Goblin Slayer took out the monster was, again, a demonstration of his, I guess, knowledge, if you will, in mostly a scientific manner. So, flour, being coarse dust, is highly combustible. There's a lot of cases of grain explosions, dust explosions, and also coal mine explosions where anytime there's very coarse, very fine dust-like particles in the air, like finely ground flour or grain, or in the case of coal mines, the coal dust, it's once you get a spark or some friction, it explodes basically. So in this case, what Goblin Slayer, the reason that he wanted the wizard and the cocky warrior guy to why he needed to buy flour from them is because he needed very finely grounded flour instead of what was, I guess, normally sold, where it's more coarse flour. Again, this is a real world thing. There's been a lot of accidents in regards to, especially grain, I believe. I recall reading about some grain explosions. You know, they have these grain silos, and it's easy because if when they grind it to a very fine dust, it's easy for the whole thing to explode. So yeah, you know, nothing too much to comment on, except that this is just another case of Goblin Slayer showing his resourcefulness, which we learned in this episode is because every time he sees something new, he has curiosity. He asks, hey, how did you do this? How did you make it? I'm willing to pay for information. He learns it, and that's how he has this encyclopedia of knowledge within him. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, overall, not too surprising an episode. I thought that this is what would happen, where they would find a way to get out of the dungeon and basically heal. Except the healing method was a bit unexpected for me, and I still don't quite get what the Sword Maiden's agenda is. You know, last episode I mentioned that I don't get why she's like, Goblin Slayer's gonna die and you're all gonna die and whatnot. But in this episode, she seems to be very supportive, right? Although, again, she's speaking in very cryptic terms, and I still have no idea what the heck she really wants to achieve. So, I guess that's a negative, but we'll see. We'll see. Any final things to talk about? Oh, some things relating to the last episode. So, during the last episode, during the very ending, where we had the canary eye on the screen and the reflection of Goblin Slayer and his party within the eye, as well as this ominous outro song in the background. I mentioned that I was holding my breath the whole time because I thought there was going to be some unexpected thing happening, bursting in at any time situation. But then in the end, I felt trolled, basically, because the song went on for like a minute or a minute and a half, and nothing really happened in the end. Well, as it turns out, that was actually supposed to be the end credits scene. So there's supposed to be credits rolling past while the song was going on, and while we could see the eye, and the eye reflecting Goblin Slayer and his party. So apparently there was some mess up during distribution. So a lot of the video streaming sites actually got the version where they had a mess up and the credits were not there. So that was what it was all about. I thought it was the creators or the animation staff deliberately trolling us, and it's not. It was meant to be a cool thing, but distribution sucks. Mistakes happen, right? So there's that. And one final thought I want to say is in regards to the manga. So like I mentioned at the beginning, I started picking up the manga and it is good. I like that it goes. I know how to describe it. First of all, besides the usual manga and light novel, by default would go into more depth than go into things in more depth than an anime would, because it simply has more room for you to fit things into it. It has a longer story arc, if you will. You can put more material into it than you can in a typical 12-season anime. That is the norm right now. So there are bound to be things that are cut, bound to be some backstory explanations that are not explained properly. But besides that, I just feel, looking at the manga, reading the manga, it just feels a lot more. It really gives you a sense of the grittiness of the world, if I can put it that way. So even though, we had this first episode and even the last episode where they show some, I guess, pretty gruesome things and nasty things happening on screen, but it just feels a little more like contrived shock when put into this anime and rushed setting than it is when I'm reading it on the manga. Part of it could also be because of the color palette, right? Because the manga is in black and white, whereas an anime has more vibrant colors. So, possibly that, but it's just, when I'm reading manga, I just feel the grittiness and the grimness, the seriousness of the world setting. Whereas in the anime, when I see these same scenes, they just seem, I don't know, kind of forced, more for shock, more for that sudden shock value than it is giving me a very cohesive sense of grittiness. So I guess that's my final 2 cents on this matter. If any of you out there are watching this anime right now, I encourage you to read the manga. Although it seems that from what I've read so far, and after looking up some information online, it seems that the anime has taken some liberties and is either skipping a few chapters of the manga, or they're going to rearrange and reorder them. Either way is possible, but it's not in the exact same order as it is in the light novel or the manga. I probably need to find some time to read the light novel as well, although I think with this kind of grimy setting, it would probably make more sense to have the visuals to go along with it rather than just reading about it. It's theoretically, it should be easier to have the sense of the atmosphere of this world and its setting than it is just for purely by words. So, that concludes my thoughts for Goblin Slayer episode 8. Let me know what you think below, and if nothing else, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.